A sharp wind swept across the grounds of Ashbury Hall as Lady Charlotte pressed a trembling hand to her mother's fevered brow. The old manor's windows rattled in their frames, echoing the shivers that ran through Charlotte's heart. She clung to the edge of her mother's bed, her mind a swirl of worry and duty. Downstairs, the measured tread of her father's boots, always purposeful, always impatient, reminded her that for Sir Richard Ashbury, even illness must not delay ambition. "She is resting now," Charlotte whispered, smoothing the linen sheets. Her mother's eyes fluttered open, their blue faded but still gentle. "You mustn't tire yourself, Mamma. I will return soon. Go, dearest. Your father expects you. Remember, you are our hope," Mrs. Ashbury murmured, her voice barely more than a sigh. Charlotte's hope felt as fragile as the china in the drawing room. Still, she squared her shoulders and descended the staircase, the world of candlelit ballrooms and whispered promises awaiting her. That evening, the Ashburys arrived at the Wycliffe's grand ball, the family carriage drawing up with less ceremony than others. Inside, a kaleidoscope of silks and laughter spun around Charlotte. But she hovered at the margins, her pale gown and gentle manner almost blending into the walls. She watched as Lady Amelia Fairfax gleaming in rose satin. Laughter ringing like crystal drew the eyes of every eligible gentleman. Charlotte's own dowry, modest and shrinking by the day, was a whisper compared to Lady Amelia's fortune. "She does not dance?" She overheard a pair of matrons muttering as Charlotte declined a second invitation, her mind still with her mother. Too reserved, I fear, and with so little to offer. Their words stung, but Charlotte kept her head high, her gaze drifting to the garden beyond the French doors. Meanwhile, Lord William Blackwood stood in the shadow of a marble column. His dark eyes narrowed with distaste. The ball, the music, the endless parade of hopeful faces, all of it felt like a gilded trap. His father's latest letter, heavy with threats and expectations, smoldered in his pocket. "Your future is Greymount's future. Do not disappoint us." William's jaw clenched. He caught sight of Lady Amelia, her laughter too bright, her glances too calculated. He turned away, seeking refuge where the air was less stifling. Outside, Charlotte wandered the moonlit garden, her breath ghosting in the cool air. Roses nodded in the breeze, their scent bittersweet. She paused beneath an ancient yew, lost in thought. A sudden footstep startled her. William emerged from the shadows, hands thrust deep in his pockets, expression thunderous. "Forgive me," he said, his voice edged with fatigue. "I did not expect company." Charlotte dipped her head. "The feeling is mutual, my lord." He studied her, noting the intelligence in her eyes, the quiet strength in her posture. "You dislike these gatherings as much as I do?" She managed a wry smile. "I find them tiresome, yet necessary, I suppose, for those of us with duties we cannot choose." His gaze sharpened. "You speak as though you, too, are a pawn." "Aren't we all?" she replied, surprising herself with her candor. He gave a short, humorless laugh. "At least you do not have a father intent on selling you to the highest bidder. My father's ambitions are less grand, but no less persistent." For a moment they stood in silence, the weight of their burdens drawing them together. Inside, the music swelled, and a new rumor swept the ballroom. The Duke of Greymount was negotiating William's match with Lady Amelia. Charlotte's heart sank, though she barely knew why. William's lips curled in a bitter smile. "Have you heard the latest? My father would have me wed Lady Amelia. Wealth, beauty, and the disposition of a spoiled cat." Charlotte laughed, the sound startling both of them. "Perhaps she will surprise you." "I doubt it. I am weary of surprises." A bell sounded, summoning the guests inside. As they re-entered, eyes turned to William and Charlotte, whispers trailing in their wake. The Duke stood with Lady Amelia at his side, their intentions all too clear. Something snapped within William. He strode forward, Charlotte at his side, his voice ringing out. "If it is matches you desire, father, let us not waste time on pretense. I propose to Lady Charlotte Ashbury, here and now, before both our families." The room froze. Fans stilled, jaws dropped, silence like a thunderclap. Charlotte's heart hammered in her chest. The Duke's face darkened, Sir Richard gasped, Lady Amelia's eyes blazed. And William, standing tall, met Charlotte's gaze with a challenge and a plea. As the stunned assembly waited for her reply, Charlotte felt the world tilt beneath her feet, caught between duty, longing, and the promise of something entirely new. Would she dare accept? And what storm would her answer bring? Rain lashed the windows of Ashbury Hall the morning after William's audacious proposal. Charlotte stood at her mother's bedside, her hands folded tightly in her lap. The storm outside seemed to echo the turmoil within. Word of the engagement had spread like wildfire. Already, notes arrived from neighbors, some congratulatory, more laced with thinly veiled curiosity and disdain. Sir Richard bustled in, cheeks flushed, voice brisk. "It is decided. The Blackwoods have agreed. The wedding must take place at once before the Duke changes his mind." Charlotte's mouth went dry. So soon? He would not meet her eyes. "We must seize the moment. For your mother's sake, Charlotte, do not falter." Charlotte squeezed her mother's hand. She saw the gratitude and apology in her mother's gaze. She was a pawn, yes, but she would do her duty. Across the county, at Greymount, William faced his own storm. The Duke's fury was a cold, simmering thing. "You shame this house," he hissed, pacing the study as William stood rigidly by the window. "To throw yourself at that girl. No connections, no fortune." William's voice was flat. "You would have me parade like a stud at market." The Duke's lip curled. "There will be no further embarrassment. You will marry, and you will keep up appearances. Do not imagine this is a victory, William." The days that followed passed in a blur. Charlotte drifted through fittings and instructions, her own voice lost among the clatter of preparations. She saw William only at formal meetings, always with others present, always under the watchful eyes of parents and staff. Their words were careful, rehearsed. "I trust you find Greymount to your liking," William said once, his tone distant. "It is very grand," Charlotte replied, keeping her gaze fixed on the teacup in her hands. "I suppose you will wish to redecorate." She managed a small, tight smile. "I should not wish to disturb the order of things." Their exchanges never ventured deeper. If William was disappointed, he hid it behind a mask of indifference. The wedding itself was a muted affair. The Ashburys and Blackwoods gathered in the chilly stone chapel, faces set in lines of tension. Charlotte wore a gown of soft ivory, her veil trembling with each uncertain step. The guests whispered behind gloved hands. Was it haste or scandal that hurried the ceremony? William's jaw was clenched as he took her hand. The vows passed between them, the words spoken but not felt. When he kissed her cheek, his lips were cold. Charlotte's fingers curled around her mother's pressed handkerchief, her heart numb. At Greymount Manor, the new Lady Charlotte moved quietly through unfamiliar corridors. The grandness of her new home pressed in on her. Heavy tapestries, vast rooms, the ceaseless, echoing silence. William vanished for hours on end, seeking refuge in his study or riding across the moors. Their dinners were silent affairs, the clink of silverware loud in the hush. Charlotte attempted conversation, but William's replies were brief, polite, and never inviting. She learned to retreat to the library, where the scent of old books brought comfort. She spent long afternoons in the neglected gardens, coaxing life from tangled roses and overgrown hedges. The earth beneath her nails was a small rebellion, a reminder she still possessed a self beyond the titles and expectations. The servants watched and whispered. "Never a smile between them," murmured Mrs. Hodge, the housekeeper, as she polished the silver. "'Tis not natural so soon after a wedding," replied cook, shaking her head. One afternoon, while Charlotte pruned a wild rose bush, she heard the crunch of gravel behind her. She turned to see a tall man in a military greatcoat, his bearing both familiar and foreign. "Lady Charlotte?" he asked, his voice warm with recognition. "Major Harrow," she exclaimed, her face lighting with genuine pleasure. Jonathan Harrow removed his hat, his eyes gentle. "It has been too long. My mother told me of your marriage. I hope you are well?" "As well as can be expected," Charlotte replied, her smile faltering. "Your return is a welcome surprise." He offered his arm, and together they strolled the winding path. Their conversation was easy, full of shared memories and gentle teasing. Jonathan spoke of his years abroad, India, Egypt, places that sounded like dreams to Charlotte. For the first time in weeks, she laughed, the sound carrying on the breeze. William watched from the library window, a volume forgotten in his lap. He saw the way Charlotte's eyes brightened, the way she leaned into Major Harrow's confidence. An unfamiliar twist of emotion, sharp and bitter, unsettled him. He slammed the book shut and strode from the room that evening. As Charlotte entered the dining room, William's gaze was colder than ever. "Did you enjoy your walk?" he asked, his tone edged. Charlotte hesitated. "Yes, very much. Major Harrow is an old friend." "Indeed. He seems to find his way to Greymount with remarkable ease." She blinked at the accusation. He was merely passing through. William's lips pressed into a thin line. "You are, of course, free to entertain whomever you please." "I assure you there is nothing untoward," Charlotte replied, her voice steady. He pushed his chair back abruptly, the legs scraping on the flagstones. "I do not care what you do, Charlotte. I am not my father." She flinched, pain flickering across her face. "I never said you were." Silence stretched between them, thick with things unsaid. In the days that followed, Charlotte found herself seeking Jonathan's company more often. He brought letters from her mother, news from the village, and a sense of calm missing from her marriage. They spoke of literature, music, and the wildness of the moors. Each encounter was innocent, yet the household noticed. "His lordship's mood is black as thunder," Mrs. Hodge confided to the footman. "Mark my words, there's trouble brewing." Late one night, Charlotte returned from the garden to find William waiting in the shadows of the hall. "I saw you with him again," he said, his voice low. She met his gaze. "Jonathan is my friend. I have so little companionship here." "Do you regret this marriage so much?" William demanded. Her answer was soft, honest. "I regret that we are strangers, when we might have been something more." He turned away, pain flickering in his eyes. "You wanted security. I wanted freedom. Perhaps neither of us will have what we wished." Charlotte watched him go, her heart heavy. The walls of Greymount seemed to close in tighter. Yet something had shifted, a spark of jealousy, a glimpse of longing, a wound laid bare. Outside, the wind rattled the windows, promising that nothing at Greymount would remain unchanged for long. As the night deepened, Charlotte lay awake, torn between duty and desire, haunted by questions of loyalty and love. In the darkness, she resolved she would find her place at Greymount, no matter the cost. But neither she nor William could know what secrets and storms their uneasy union would soon unleash. Charlotte stood at the threshold of the breakfast room, her nerves pulled taut as the strings of a harp. The morning sun, muted by thick clouds, barely reached the starched linen and polished silver. At the table's head sat the Dowager Duchess of Greymount William's grandmother, her spine straight as an arrow, her gaze sharp as a hawk's. "Lady Charlotte," the Dowager intoned, her voice clipped. "You are late." Charlotte inclined her head. "Forgive me, Your Grace." "I was assisting cook with a letter to her daughter." A faint arch of the Dowager's brow. "How very industrious. Yet I wonder if a lady of Greymount ought to busy herself in the servants' quarters." Charlotte met the older woman's gaze, refusing to flinch. "The staff are the heart of this house. I wish to understand them." The Dowager's silence was heavy with disapproval. "One must remember one's station, Lady Charlotte. Familiarity breeds contempt." William sat further down the table, his expression unreadable behind the morning paper. He said nothing. The rift between them had grown colder since the wedding, the brief spark of jealousy extinguished beneath the weight of expectation and pride. After breakfast, Charlotte made her rounds through the estate, visiting tenants and listening to their worries: illness, failed crops, a missing lamb. Her kindness and quick understanding earned her grateful smiles and small tokens: a bunch of primroses, a hand-woven basket. In the kitchen, cook beamed at her, and young Sally, the maid, confided shyly, "The old Duchess never cared to know our names, milady." Yet for every kindness returned, Charlotte felt the cold sting of scrutiny from above. The Dowager Duchess watched her every move, finding fault in the smallest gestures. Her modest dress, her soft accent, her fondness for reading in the garden instead of practicing music in the drawing-room. Rumors swirled like autumn leaves. The Duke, rarely at Greymount but ever present in the gossip, had begun to drop poisonous hints among the neighboring gentry. "Ashbury's debts are far greater than we imagined," he murmured at a dinner party. One wonders what desperation drives a young woman to such a match. His words traveled swiftly, picked up and embroidered by the idle tongues of the county. Some suggested Charlotte had entrapped William for his fortune. Others whispered about her solitary walks with Major Harrow. William felt the sting of his friend's mockery. At the club in town, laughter bit like frost. "You, Blackwood, married for love or for pity?" sneered Lord Eversham, swirling his brandy. "Or was it simply lack of better options?" William's jaw tightened. "My marriage is no concern of yours. Come now, she's a pretty little thing. And so very grateful, I imagine." The laughter that followed made William's skin crawl. He drank too much, stayed out too late, and returned home colder and more withdrawn. In the growing silence between husband and wife, Charlotte found solace only in her letters from home and in the unexpected comfort of Jonathan Harrow's company. Major Harrow, always courteous, never pressed her with questions. But one afternoon, as they walked the path along the river, his words took on a different weight. "Do not let the Duke or his friends trouble you, Charlotte," he said quietly. "The Greymount name is not so spotless as they believe." She looked up, startled. "You speak as if you know something." Jonathan hesitated. "Let us say I have seen the Blackwoods at their best and their worst. I served with men whose secrets were far darker than gossip and pride." Charlotte pressed him gently. "You were often at Greymount as a boy, were you not?" A shadow crossed his face. "My father was estate steward before his death. The Blackwoods offered me patronage, but the cost was high. I have not forgotten." She reached out, her hand brushing his sleeve. "You have always been a friend, Jonathan. I do not know what I would do without your counsel." He smiled, but something unreadable lingered in his eyes. "You are stronger than you believe, Charlotte. Do not let them change you." Their friendship did not go unnoticed. In the servants' hall, Mrs. Hodge pursed her lips. "Too much time with that soldier, if you ask me. And the Duke's been saying things about her family and her virtue," whispered Sally. "Mark my words, trouble's coming," the cook replied, shaking her head over the soup. Charlotte sensed the change. Invitations from neighboring families dwindled. When she entered the drawing room, conversation stilled. Even the Dowager Duchess's criticisms grew sharper, laced with warnings about the dangers of overfamiliarity and impropriety. One evening, Charlotte found herself alone with William in the library. He sat by the fire, glass in hand, staring into the flames. She hesitated in the doorway, then gathered her courage. "William," she began softly, "is there nothing we might do to—" He did not look up. "To what, Charlotte? Repair what was never whole?" She took a step closer. "I know I am not what your family hoped for, but I am not ashamed of who I am, nor of my family." He turned, bitterness in his voice. "You think I care for their approval? My father seeks only to control, and my friends." He broke off, jaw clenched. "Let them talk." She met his gaze, steady and unflinching. "I will not let them destroy me. Or you." For a fleeting instant, something like admiration flickered in his eyes, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. Afterward, Charlotte withdrew to her chamber, her heart pounding with mingled fear and resolve. She wrote to her mother, "I'm lonely, but I will endure. Greymount will not defeat me." The next morning, as she made her way to the tenant cottages with baskets of food, a carriage passed on the lane. Its window lowered just enough for Charlotte to catch the Duke's cold, assessing stare. Later, the Dowager Duchess summoned her. "I must remind you, Lady Charlotte, that a woman's reputation is her only shield. Take care with whom you are seen." Charlotte lifted her chin. "I will not hide my kindness, nor my friends. If that offends, so be it." The Dowager's lips thinned. "Defiance does not suit you, my dear." But Charlotte only curtsied, her eyes clear. She walked from the room with her shoulders squared, determined that she would not be cowed by whispers or malice. In the quiet of the garden, Jonathan found her, worry etched on his brow. "You must be careful, Charlotte. The Duke is dangerous when crossed." "I will not give him cause," she replied. "But I will not betray myself either." He pressed her hand in reassurance. "You are not alone." But as Charlotte looked back at the looming walls of Greymount, she knew that if she was to survive and to belong, She must prove herself, not just to William and his family, but to the world that watched her with suspicious eyes. And far away, in the Duke's study, plans were being laid, plans that threatened to shake the fragile peace Charlotte had carved for herself. The battle for Greymount had only just begun. Dawn crept over Greymount, its pale light spilling across the frost-laced fields and the steely grandeur of the manor. In the stillness, Charlotte rose quietly, careful not to disturb the house with her footsteps. She dressed with purposeful haste, her mind already teeming with the day's duties. As she descended the great staircase, her presence was a far cry from the timid figure who had first entered these halls. She found the estate ledger in the study, its pages bristling with debts, unpaid rents, and the small, desperate notations of the former steward. Charlotte ran her fingers over the ink, brow furrowing. The work was daunting, but it offered a sense of order she could cling to, a purpose that belonged to her alone. By mid-morning, she was in the tenant cottages, boots muddied, skirts dusted with straw. The tenants, at first wary, soon warmed to her gentle inquiries and practical mind. She listened with care to the mother's concerns about leaking roofs and empty pantries, offered sound advice to the aging shepherd, and spent hours helping the vicar's wife organize a fund for the poorest families. One afternoon, as she knelt beside a broken fence, young Tommy Harker approached, hat in hand. "Milady, the sheep broke loose again. Pa says there'll be the death of him." Charlotte smiled, brushing dirt from her gloves. "Let us see what can be done, Tommy. If we mend this post and secure the gate, I believe your father may yet outlive his flock." The boy grinned, and together they worked until the last nail was hammered home. Word of her efforts spread quickly, and even the most hardened tenants began tipping their hats and offering shy greetings as she passed. Not everyone in the family was so easily won. The Dowager Duchess watched Charlotte's forays into the estate with cool suspicion. Her lips pursed whenever Charlotte returned with mud-spattered hems and wind-reddened cheeks. "You comport yourself more as a steward than a lady," the Dowager observed one evening as Charlotte entered the drawing-room. "It is not seemly." Charlotte met her gaze, unflinching. "The estate is the livelihood of many, Your Grace. It would be remiss of me to ignore their needs." The Dowager's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing further. In private, she grumbled to William, "Your wife courts the tenants' affection as if she were one of them. It is dangerous to blur such lines." William, standing by the window, watched Charlotte cross the lawn below, her laughter ringing as she conversed with Mrs. Harker and her children. "She is managing what no one else has bothered to," he said quietly. The Dowager pressed, "Do not mistake gratitude for loyalty, William. Remember who she is and who you are." Yet William found himself increasingly drawn to Charlotte's quiet strength. He watched her at dinner as she listened intently to the butler's concerns about the cellar roof, or how she comforted a trembling scullery maid after a broken dish. He remembered the isolation of his own youth, the cold indifference of his father, the relentless weight of expectation. There was a dignity in Charlotte's labor, a compassion he could not ignore. But still, he kept his distance, his pride and uncertainty forming a silent wall between them. The estate's new rhythm was shattered late one evening, when a frantic pounding echoed at the manor door. Charlotte, candle in hand, hurried to the hall. There, drenched and wild-eyed, stood Mary Harker, her shawl slipping from her shoulders. "Please, milady, it's Annie. She's burning up. We've sent for the doctor, but he's gone to the next parish. I don't know what to do." Without hesitation, Charlotte gathered her cloak. "Take me to her." She found little Annie tossing in fevered delirium, her breath ragged and cheeks flushed crimson. The cottage was thick with panic. Mary sobbing, Mr. Harker wringing his hands helplessly. Charlotte took command with a calm she did not feel. "We must cool her, quickly. Bring fresh water and clean linens. Open the window a crack just enough for air." Through the long, desperate night, Charlotte bathed Annie's brow, coaxed her to sip water, and whispered soothing stories over her feverish cries. When the doctor finally arrived at dawn, he found Charlotte exhausted but steadfast at the child's side. "You've done well, Lady Charlotte," he pronounced, examining the girl. "You may have saved her life." Word of Charlotte's actions spread like wildfire. The tenants spoke her name with reverence, and even the most skeptical of family members grudgingly voiced approval. The vicar praised her from the pulpit, and small bouquets appeared at the manor gates. Later that morning, William encountered Mrs. Harker as she knelt in the chapel. The woman rose, tears shining in her eyes. "She is an angel, my lord. We owe her everything." William's throat tightened with shame and awe. He found Charlotte in the garden, her face drawn with fatigue, but her eyes alight with quiet purpose. "I heard what you did for Annie Harker," he said, his voice softer than she had heard in many weeks. Charlotte shrugged, embarrassed. "Anyone would have done the same." He shook his head. "No, not anyone." They stood together in silence, sunlight gilding the world around them. For a brief moment, William saw her not as an adversary or a stranger, but as a woman of rare courage, one he might have admired, even loved, had things been different. But when he reached for words of thanks, pride tangled his tongue. "You have done your duty well," he managed, then turned away before he could betray more. Charlotte watched him go, a pang in her chest. Always so close, and yet unreachable. Their fragile détente was soon threatened by the persistent shadow of Jonathan Harrow. The Major's visits became more frequent, his concern for Charlotte ever more evident. He brought news from the village, small gifts for the staff, and a steady, unwavering support that Charlotte had come to rely upon. One afternoon, as Charlotte oversaw the repair of the dairy roof, Jonathan appeared at her side, his brow furrowed. "You work yourself too hard, Charlotte. The estate will not collapse if you rest." She smiled, grateful for his kindness. "There is so much to do, Jonathan. I fear if I pause, I shall lose my courage entirely." He gazed at her, his tone gentle. "You are braver than anyone at Greymount gives you credit for, but you must remember you are not alone." She hesitated, the weight of loneliness pressing on her. "Sometimes I feel I am, William." Jonathan's voice hardened. "He does not deserve your trust, not after how you've been treated." Charlotte shook her head. "He is not cruel, only wounded. We are both prisoners of this place." Jonathan placed a reassuring hand on her arm, his touch lingering. "If ever you need a friend, Charlotte, you know where to find me." From the library window, William saw the two of them together, Jonathan's hand on Charlotte's arm, her soft smile. A surge of jealousy, hot and unwelcome, twisted in his chest. He recalled the Dowager Duchess's recent warning. "Major Harrow's devotion to your wife is most improper. A woman's reputation is a fragile thing, William. Allowing such familiarity would be a grave mistake." He had brushed it aside then, but now, watching the easy intimacy between them, doubts gnawed at him. Was Charlotte seeking from Jonathan the comfort she had never found with him? That evening, dinner was a tense affair. The Dowager Duchess's eyes flicked from Charlotte to William, satisfaction lurking behind her measured words. "How fortunate we are to have Major Harrow so attentive to Greymount's affairs," she remarked, her tone pointed. Charlotte stiffened. "Major Harrow is a family friend, Your Grace. He is kind to all." The Dowager's lips curled. Kindness, when unchecked, may breed scandal. William pushed his plate aside. "Enough, grandmother." The old woman's gaze sharpened. "I only mean to protect the family's good name." Charlotte rose, her voice steady. "I assure you, my conduct is beyond reproach." Afterward, William found her in the hallway, her face pale but resolute. "You must not listen to her," she said quietly. "Jonathan has done nothing wrong." He searched her face, longing to believe her, longing to bridge the chasm between them. "Do you care for him?" Charlotte's eyes widened in pain and disbelief. "He is my friend, William. Nothing more." He turned away, fists clenched. "Forgive me. It is not easy, this," she interrupted, voice trembling. "It is not easy for me either. I have tried to be worthy of Greymount, of you. Yet always I am found wanting." He reached for her, then stopped short, uncertainty and longing warring within him. "Perhaps we have both been blind." She shook her head, tears shining. "If only we could speak as honestly as we feel." But honesty, she knew, was a dangerous luxury in a house riddled with secrets and suspicion. Days passed. Charlotte threw herself even more fiercely into her duties, organizing the harvest, settling disputes among tenants, and seeing to the well-being of every soul on the estate. Her determination won grudging respect from the Dowager Duchess, and even William's friends, when they visited, spoke of her with admiration. Yet the tension between Charlotte and William grew more taut with every passing day. Each longed to reach the other, but pride, fear, and the meddling of others kept them at arm's length. Jonathan's protective presence became a lightning rod for gossip. The staff whispered, the Dowager watched, and William's jealousy simmered beneath his stoic exterior. Charlotte, caught in the storm, found herself more isolated than ever. One evening, as Charlotte gazed out at the moors, William joined her, the silence between them heavy. "Charlotte," he said at last, I have been unjust." She turned, surprise and hope flickering in her eyes. He struggled, the words coming haltingly. "I see now how much you have done for Greymount, for everyone. I'm grateful, truly." A faint smile touched her lips. "Thank you, William. I only wish—" But the words withered between them, the distance unbridged. He hesitated, then retreated, leaving her alone with her thoughts. Night fell, and the house settled into uneasy quiet. In her chamber, Charlotte penned a letter to her mother, her heart torn between duty and longing. She wondered if true understanding between herself and William was even possible, or if the suspicions, secrets, and pride of Greymount would always keep them apart. Yet, as the autumn wind howled outside, Charlotte vowed to fight for the place she had claimed, and for a love that, though battered, had not yet been extinguished. Unbeknownst to her, shadows moved within the halls of Greymount, and choices made in the coming days would test every fragile bond she had forged, altering the course of her life, and William's, forever. A storm raged across the moors, battering Greymount with wind and rain, as if the world itself echoed the unrest within its walls. Charlotte stood at her window, fists clenched, watching the trees bend and shudder. Below, the house was restless footsteps on polished floors, the distant clang of a door. Even the servants whispered more than usual, their eyes wary. William's footsteps were not cautious. He entered her sitting room without knocking, jaw set, eyes burning with a storm of their own. Charlotte turned slowly, spine straightening as she met his gaze. "You have been with Major Harrow again," he said, his voice low but trembling. "You spend more time in his company than in mine." Her lips parted in disbelief. "And why should I not? He speaks to me kindly. He listens, William." He took a step closer, fists at his sides. "You think I do not see how he looks at you? How the entire county talks?" Charlotte's anger snapped free. "Let them talk. You care more for your family's name than for me. You have never once asked what I feel, what I need." His face twisted. "I have tried, Charlotte, but you keep yourself hidden, as if I am the enemy." She advanced, trembling. "You do not trust me. Not with your heart, not with anything. You watch me as if I am a burden you must bear." He flinched, the words cutting deep. "I have been used all my life. My father manipulates. My friends betray. I thought—" He broke off, voice hoarse. "I thought you might be different. But you have secrets too." Charlotte's voice shook. "My only secret is fear, William. Fear that I am nothing to you, that I will be discarded when you tire of this farce. I have no power here, no certainty, not even your respect." Silence surged between them, thick with years of wounds. Rain lashed the glass. William's voice softened, raw and unguarded. "I am angry, yes, but not at you. At my father, at myself, for being too weak to defy him. I did not want a marriage like this. I did not want to become the man he wished me to be." A tear slid down Charlotte's cheek before she could stop it. "And I did not want to be a wife in name only. I wanted something gentle, something true." For a fleeting moment, their hearts met, naked and aching. William reached for her hand. She did not draw away. His grip was uncertain but warm. "I am sorry," he whispered. "So am I," she breathed. Their fingers entwined, but the spell broke as quickly as it formed. William released her, shame flooding his features. Charlotte stepped back, wiping her cheek. "We are both prisoners of pride," she said softly. He nodded, unable to meet her eyes. "Perhaps we are." The truce between them was uneasy but real. They spoke with more care, their quarrels replaced by silence and the occasional, tentative kindness. Yet the wounds beneath the surface did not heal overnight. A letter arrived from Ashbury Hall. Charlotte tore it open in the privacy of her room, breath catching as she read her father's clipped lines. Her mother was gravely ill, her decline swift, her pain unrelenting. The doctors were helpless. Comfort was all that remained. Charlotte pressed the paper to her heart, pain twisting through her. She could not return home, not now, not with the eyes of Greymount upon her and her duty here so precarious. Yet her mother's suffering haunted her every waking hour. Word of her distress traveled quickly. Jonathan appeared at the manor the following day, concern etched in every line of his face. "I have heard from the vicar," he said quietly, drawing her aside in the garden. "Your mother is very unwell." Charlotte's composure fractured. "I cannot help her, Jonathan. I have nothing to offer, nothing to send. If she, her voice broke. Jonathan took her hand, gentle and earnest. "Let me help. I can provide what is needed medicine, comforts, whatever it takes. There need be no shame in accepting aid from a friend." But Charlotte shook her head, pride stiffening her spine. "No, Jonathan. I am grateful, but I must bear this myself. My family's honor is all we have left." He squeezed her hand. "If you change your mind, I am here." William, watching unseen from the terrace, saw the earnest exchange and the pain on Charlotte's face. Guilt gnawed at him. Had he been so blind to her suffering? That night, he sat late at his desk, pen in hand, composing a letter to a discreet solicitor in London. He arranged for funds to be sent to Ashbury Hall, enough for medicine, for comfort, for anything his wife's mother might require. The gift would appear anonymous, no trace of Greymount or Blackwood attached. He sealed the letter with shaking hands, heart pounding. He would not tell Charlotte. Pride still would not allow it. Yet for the first time, he felt he had done something right. In the days that followed, Charlotte moved through the manor in a haze of worry and exhaustion. She managed her duties with quiet efficiency, but laughter no longer touched her eyes. William's efforts to reach her faltered. He could offer only awkward words and silent companionship. They shared meals with a new civility. When Charlotte spoke, William listened. When William gave an order, Charlotte did not bristle. They were not friends, not yet lovers, but something tentative fragile as a truce held them together. Once, William found her in the library, staring sightlessly at a book. "Is there anything I can do?" he asked, awkward but sincere. She shook her head. "You are kind to ask." He hesitated, then left her in peace. The household noticed the shift. The Dowager Duchess, ever watchful, remarked on the new decorum between lord and lady. The servants whispered less, sensing the tension had cooled. Jonathan visited less frequently, sensing his presence only complicated matters. Late one evening, Charlotte received a letter from her father. Her mother's pain had eased and a new nurse had arrived, discreet, skilled, and equipped with all the comforts money could buy. "A benefactor unknown to us has made this possible," Sir Richard wrote, bewildered but grateful. Charlotte read the words twice, heart full and aching. She wondered, but did not ask, if William had anything to do with it. Some things, she sensed, were best left unspoken. As autumn deepened, the moors turned gold and purple. William and Charlotte crossed paths in the garden, neither hostile, neither wholly at ease. Sometimes their eyes met and held, both searching for the words they could not yet say. Trust, she realized, was a slow, stubborn thing, built in silence, rebuilt in the smallest acts of mercy. She did not know if love would come, but for now, the war between them was stilled. Yet as the leaves fell and the wind sharpened, new dangers gathered on the horizon, threats that neither pride nor truce could hold at bay. And in the shadowed halls of Greymount, the future waited, silent, watchful, and uncertain. Sunlight spilled like gold across the lawns of Greymount, igniting the dew on the new grass and stirring the air with the promise of spring. For the first time in months, Charlotte felt the world itself inviting her to breathe deeply, to believe in renewal. She watched from the terrace as crocuses unfurled along the garden paths and young lambs tumbled in the meadows beyond the ha-ha. The winter's shadows had not vanished, but they seemed, at least for now, to soften at the edges. Within the house, change was palpable. Charlotte's careful stewardship of the estate had earned her grudging respect from both tenants and servants. Mrs. Hodge, the housekeeper, now consulted her on household matters. The grooms tipped their hats with genuine affection. Even the Dowager Duchess's criticism had grown muted, replaced by a kind of wary observance. Yet the season's thaw did not touch every heart. Rumors about Charlotte's connection to Jonathan Harrow still swirled, persistent as nettles. Whispers flickered in the corridors and drifted through the village. Charlotte learned to bear the scrutiny with composure, but it weighed on her, an ache just beneath her skin. One afternoon, as she knelt among the flower beds, she overheard two maids in the shrubbery. "They say Major Harrow visits too often," one hissed. "And did you see the way he looks at her?" Charlotte's hands stilled in the loam. She forced herself to keep working, her face serene. She would not let gossip undo what she had built. Inside, William wrestled with his own unrest. He watched Charlotte from afar, her quiet competence, her laughter with the children of tenants, the kindness she bestowed on all who crossed her path. Once, he would have dismissed it as mere performance. Now, doubt tugged at his certainties. He saw how people's loyalties had shifted, how even his grandmother's tone had softened. At night, William lay awake, torn between the cold, implacable loyalty demanded by his father and the unfamiliar tenderness blooming for his wife. He remembered their quarrel, the pain in her eyes, and the fragile peace they had since maintained. He wanted to reach for her, but fear and pride lingered in every gesture. The Duke, however, had not relented. Stung by William's growing independence and Charlotte's rise in the household, he began a covert campaign to discredit her. Word spread that the Ashburys' debts were greater than anyone had realized. Anonymous notes circulated among the county's elite, hinting at Charlotte's supposed ambition and her unsuitable friendship with Major Harrow. The rumors found fertile ground in drawing rooms and parlors, from Greymount to the market town. William learned of his father's schemes from Lady Eversham, who arrived one morning, eyes bright with scandal. "My dear William, I hesitate to mention it, but tongues are wagging. They say your wife is not what she seems, that her family's finances are in utter ruin, and there are other stories too. About Major Harrow." William's face went white with anger. "Who spread such poison?" She fanned herself, feigning innocence. "Why, I cannot say, but the Duke is most displeased. He fears for the family's reputation." After she left, William strode through the manor, rage simmering. He confronted his father in the library, voice shaking. "You will not destroy her. I will not allow it." The Duke looked up from his correspondence, his expression glacial. "You are a fool, William. A man must protect his house, especially from schemers and sentimental women. If you cannot do so, I shall." William's fists clenched. "You have gone too far." But the Duke only smiled coldly. "You are powerless to stop me. Remember your duty." The crisis reached its peak at the Greymount Spring Ball, a grand affair meant to display the family's power and taste. Guests arrived in carriages that lined the drive for half a mile. The ballroom glittered with candlelight, the air thick with music and expensive perfume. Charlotte moved through the crowd with practiced grace, her gown the soft blue of a May sky, pearls at her throat. She greeted every guest with warmth, refusing to let her apprehension show. But beneath her composure, she braced herself for the subtle slights and sidelong glances. Lady Amelia made her entrance late, resplendent in scarlet silk, her laughter drawing every eye. She circled Charlotte with predatory ease, her words sugar-sweet and sharp as glass. "My dear Lady Charlotte, you must be exhausted. So many responsibilities for one so newly arrived, and such a friendship with Major Harrow. Tell me, how do you manage so many admirers?" Charlotte's cheeks flushed, but her voice was steady. "I value my friends, Lady Amelia. I hope you are as fortunate." Amelia's eyes glittered. "Of course, but some would say a lady must be careful. The world can be so unkind to those whose pasts are complicated. I do hope your family's affairs are in order." A hush fell over the nearby guests. Charlotte felt every gaze fixed upon her, every whisper a dagger at her back. Before she could answer, William appeared at her side. He surveyed Amelia with a cold, formal courtesy. "Lady Amelia, you seem eager for entertainment. Perhaps you might find some elsewhere." Amelia blinked, taken aback by his tone. "I meant only—" He cut her off, voice ringing clear. "Lady Charlotte is my wife. She has nothing to explain to anyone in this room. If you wish to indulge in gossip, I suggest you look elsewhere for a victim." The assembly murmured, shocked at William's public defense. Amelia's lips tightened and she swept away, leaving Charlotte and William at the center of a silent, watching crowd. William turned to Charlotte, his voice low. "Are you all right?" She nodded, her composure restored. "Thank you, William." He offered his arm, and for the rest of the evening he did not leave her side. It was the first time he had openly chosen her, and the room took notice. Later, as the last guests departed and the candles guttered low, Charlotte slipped out onto the terrace. The moon hung over the gardens, silvering the tulips and casting long shadows across the gravel walks. William found her there, hands clasped on the balustrade. "You did not have to defend me," she said softly, staring at the night. He stood beside her, close but not touching. "Yes, I did. I should have done so sooner." She glanced at him, uncertainty and hope mingling in her eyes. "I'm used to fighting my own battles." He hesitated, then spoke with rare vulnerability. "You should not have to not alone." They stood in silence, the air between them charged with things unsaid. William's hand moved, as if to take hers, then stopped. "Do you believe what they say?" Charlotte asked, her voice scarcely more than a whisper. "About Jonathan, about my family." He shook his head, earnest and troubled. "I have been a fool, Charlotte. I see now what you have endured, how much you have done for this house. I'm sorry for doubting you, for not seeing you as you are." She looked down, blinking away sudden tears. "It is hard to trust. For both of us." He nodded. "But perhaps we might try." A tentative smile flickered on her lips. "Perhaps." For a long moment, they stood together, the night soft around them. Something new pulsed between them, fragile but real, a spark in the darkness. But as dawn crept over Greymount, Charlotte knew the world beyond the garden would not rest. The Duke's schemes, the county's gossip, and old wounds still threatened what little peace she and William had found. Yet as she met William's eyes, she wondered if hope might yet survive the coming storm, if love, once kindled, could truly take root in even the stoniest ground. Charlotte awoke to birdsong, the sound bright and almost mocking in its cheerfulness. She pressed a hand to her belly, feeling at once fragile and fiercely protective. The physician's words still rang in her ears. "You are with child, Lady Charlotte." The signs are unmistakable. Relief and terror had warred in her heart all night, and neither feeling had won. Now, in the pale spring light, she braced herself for what must come. By noon, the news had swept through Greymount like wildfire. Servants exchanged knowing glances, the tenants offered shy congratulations, but Charlotte saw suspicion flicker in more than one pair of eyes, and she heard, as if from far away, the first low hum of gossip. The county, always hungry for scandal, would not be satisfied with simple joy. William found her in the rose garden, where she had sought solitude among the budding blooms. He looked uncertain, hopeful, wary, and deeply shaken. "I heard," he said, voice soft. "Are you well?" She nodded, folding her hands protectively across her midsection. "Yes, the physician says all is well. She faltered, searching his face for something she could not name. He took a hesitant step closer. "Charlotte, this is good news." She managed a trembling smile, but something in his eyes made her heart stutter. He was holding himself too tightly, as if bracing for a blow. She longed to reach for him, to ask for reassurance, but pride, hers and his, held her fast. Within days, the gossip had grown teeth. The old rumors about her friendship with Jonathan Harrow returned, sharper and more poisonous than before. In the village, people whispered that the timing was suspicious, that the child might not be William's. The Duke, ever watchful for an opportunity, seized the moment with cold calculation. At dinner, he let his gaze linger on Charlotte's rounded cheeks and then turned to William with a sigh heavy with meaning. "Fortunate, is it not, That the child arrives now, he murmured, just loud enough for the table to hear. One wonders what stories Major Harrow might tell if asked. William's face went white. Charlotte felt the blood drain from her own cheeks. She forced herself to meet the Duke's gaze, unflinching, but the harm was done. By the next morning, whispers slithered through the corridors of Greymount and into every drawing room from Ashbury to Eversham Park. Some recalled seeing Charlotte and Jonathan walking alone. Others remembered how fiercely Jonathan had defended her. The word bastard was never spoken aloud, but it curled behind every closed door and fluttered in every note passed between neighbors. William, battered by years of suspicion and his father's manipulations, struggled to hold on to trust. He found Charlotte in the library, her hands trembling as she sorted through correspondence. He closed the door behind him, voice taut and brittle. "We must speak plainly, Charlotte." She set the letters down, her eyes wary. "About what?" He stared at her, searching for certainty. "About the child, about Jonathan." "I need to know." She drew herself up, wounded pride flaring. "You need to know if I have betrayed you, if the child is yours." Pain flickered across his features. "Charlotte, She cut him off, voice trembling. "After all we have endured, after everything I have suffered, you still doubt me." He looked away, unable to bear her gaze. "There are things I cannot ignore. My father," her voice broke. "Your father would see me ruined, whatever I did. But you—" She pressed a hand to her chest. "You were meant to be different." He reached for her, regret in his eyes. "Charlotte, please." She recoiled as if burned. "You have never trusted me, not truly. Even now, when I need you most, you choose suspicion." He stood helpless, guilt and anger at war within him. At that moment the butler appeared, voice grave. "Major Harrow has arrived, my lord. He says he was summoned urgently." William's jaw tightened. "Show him in." Jonathan entered, boots still dusty from the road. He took in the scene at a glance. Charlotte's stricken face, William's clenched fists, and bowed stiffly. "I was told you wished to see me, my lord." William's tone was cold. "I have questions for you, Harrow, about your relationship with my wife." Jonathan's eyes flashed. "We have always been friends. Nothing more." The air snapped with the force of old rivalry. William pressed on, voice low. "You have been seen together, often and alone. There are those who say—" Jonathan's jaw tightened. "Let them say what they will. I have never dishonored Charlotte. I would defend her against any man who suggests otherwise, including you." Charlotte's hands trembled. "Please, both of you. This is shameful." Jonathan turned to her, gentler. "Charlotte, you know my regard for you is sincere, but I would never have wished for this. Never." William's anger gave way to anguish. "Why did you not tell me how deeply you cared for her?" Jonathan met his gaze, honest and unafraid. "Because it was not my place. You are her husband." The confrontation left Charlotte hollow, the weight of their mistrust too much to bear. She withdrew from both men, retreating to her chamber, where she wept until her head ached. In the days that followed, Charlotte became a ghost in her own home. She moved through the halls quietly, avoiding William and Jonathan alike. Servants watched her with pity and curiosity. The Dowager Duchess, sensing the depth of Charlotte's despair, summoned her to the old sitting room, where the air still smelled faintly of lavender and old grief. "Sit with me, child," the Dowager said, her tone unusually gentle. Charlotte obeyed, hands clenched in her lap. After a long silence, the Dowager spoke. "You think you are the first woman to be the subject of gossip in these halls. I assure you, you are not." Charlotte glanced at her, surprised. The Dowager's face was softer than she had ever seen it. "When I first married the old Duke, there were rumors far worse than these. They said I was barren, that I had taken a lover, that the heir would never be born. I was alone, frightened, and too proud to ask for help. My only comfort was in knowing the truth, even when no one else believed it." Charlotte swallowed hard. "How did you endure it?" The Dowager reached for her hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "By refusing to let others define me, by holding fast to what I knew of myself, and eventually by forgiving those who doubted me, including my husband." Tears pricked Charlotte's eyes. but I'm so tired, and I do not know if William will ever trust me again." The dowager's voice was fierce. "He is a fool, but not a wicked man. Sometimes it takes losing what you most value to know its worth. Give him time, and give yourself kindness, too." For the first time in weeks, Charlotte felt a thread of hope. The dowager's confession was a lifeline, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, dignity and love could survive. That evening, Charlotte sat alone in her room, hand resting on the gentle swell of her belly. The pain of William's doubt was raw, but the dowager's words echoed in her mind. She was not alone, not entirely. Somewhere beneath the ruin of trust, something softer remained. Below in the study, William stood staring into the fire, regret gnawing at him. He had seen the devastation in Charlotte's eyes, heard the conviction in Jonathan's words. He wondered if he had been wrong all along, if his fear of betrayal had made him blind to the truth. He wished for the courage to make things right, but pride and old wounds still held him captive. Above and below, in the old house ringed by rumor and memory, husband and wife nursed their separate wounds, each longing for absolution, neither certain how to reach for it. Yet as night deepened over Greymount, the wind carried with it the promise of change. In the darkness, Charlotte vowed that for the sake of her child and her own battered heart, she would not let shame or suspicion define her. And somewhere, in the silence, a new beginning waited to be claimed. Thunder threatened on the horizon as William stalked the corridors of Greymount, every step laced with purpose. For days he had watched Charlotte retreat into herself. Her laughter vanished, her eyes shadowed by grief and humiliation. He could bear it no longer. The time for doubt had passed. The time for truth was now. He began with the staff, questioning them one by one. Most were loyal to Charlotte, but William soon sensed fear in the eyes of those closest to his father. In the scullery, he found Sally, the youngest maid, wringing her apron with nervous hands. "Tell me the truth," William said quietly. "Has anyone asked you to say things about Lady Charlotte?" "Anyone offered you money?" Sally's eyes darted to the door. "It weren't my idea, my lord. The steward, he said the Duke wanted certain stories told. He gave me a shilling for each one." William's jaw clenched. "And the letters? The ones that turned up in the village?" Sally nodded, voice trembling. "The steward wrote them. I saw him. He said it was for the good of the house." William's anger burned hot and cold. He dismissed Sally gently and pressed on, speaking to footmen and housemaids, piecing together a web of bribery and deceit. In the steward's office, he found a locked drawer. The key was not hard to locate. Within, he discovered a clutch of forged letters, each in a trembling feminine hand, letters purporting to be from Charlotte to Jonathan, filled with false affection and secret rendezvous. He read them all, rage mounting. These were the weapons his father had wielded. Lies on paper, poison in the dark. William gathered the evidence, his resolve hardening with each new betrayal revealed. It was dusk when he sought out Jonathan Harrow. He found the major in the stables, brushing down his horse with more vigor than was strictly necessary. William closed the door behind him, the air thick with tension. "I know what my father has done," William said without preamble. "But I must know everything, Jonathan. If you care for Charlotte, as you claim, you owe her honesty." Jonathan's shoulders tensed. He set down the brush and turned, eyes haunted but resolute. "You are right. There is something you do not know, something I have hidden all my life." He paused, searching for the words. "My mother was the mistress of Lord Selwyn. She raised me alone. But before her death, she confessed the truth of my birth. Selwyn, your father's most bitter political rival, was my father. I am his illegitimate son. The Duke learned of this years ago and has used it against me ever since." William stared, stunned. "You are Selwyn's son?" Jonathan nodded. "I never wanted to bring shame to your house or to Charlotte. That is why I kept my distance, why I never declared my feelings. Yes, I care for her, but nothing improper ever occurred. She has been a true friend, nothing more." A long silence stretched between them. William's anger softened into regret. "Why did you not tell me before?" Jonathan's voice was rough. "Because secrets are currency in this world, William. I have lived in fear of what your father might do if the truth emerged." William extended a hand, his own voice unsteady. "Thank you for your honesty. I'm sorry for everything." Jonathan gripped his hand, a truce forged in shared pain. Armed with the truth, William returned to the house. He found Charlotte in her sitting room, pale but composed, a letter from her mother clutched in her lap. She looked up as he entered, weariness etched in every line of her face. He approached slowly, evidence in hand. "Charlotte, I have been blind. My father orchestrated everything, the letters, the rumors, the bribes. Here, see for yourself." She took the papers, her hands shaking. As she read, tears welled in her eyes, first of anger, then relief, and finally exhaustion. When she finished, she looked at William, her expression guarded. "Why should I believe this is the end?" she whispered. "You doubted me so easily." His voice was thick with remorse. "I let my father poison my mind. I was weak, and I am sorry. I cannot ask your forgiveness, not yet, but I will do everything in my power to make this right." She turned away, wounded pride still raw. "Trust is not given twice, William, not easily." He bowed his head. "I know, but I will fight for it." The revelation exploded across the county. The forged letters and bribed servants were discovered, and word of the Duke's treachery swept through the ranks of the gentry. Some delighted in the scandal, but many, especially those who had seen Charlotte's kindness firsthand, rallied to her side. The Dowager Duchess, newly fierce in her loyalty, called upon old friends and powerful allies. Letters of support arrived from Lady Eversham, the vicar's wife, and even Lord Selwyn himself, who expressed relief at his son's innocence and gratitude for Charlotte's integrity. The Duke, meanwhile, retreated into his study, the weight of exposure pressing on him like a physical blow. William confronted him there, the air between father and son thick with unfinished war. "You have gone too far," William said coldly. "I have the evidence. If you continue your campaign against Charlotte, I will make everything public. The letters, the bribes, your threats." The Duke's eyes narrowed. "You would destroy your own name?" William's voice was steel. "If that is the price, so be it. But I will not allow you to ruin her or Jonathan any longer." The Duke sneered, but William saw the fear behind his bluster. "You are weak, William. You will never survive in this world." William met his gaze, unflinching. "Perhaps, but I will not become you." In the days that followed, Charlotte's isolation began to lift. The Dowager Duchess visited her daily, bringing news of those who had come to her defense. "You have more allies than you realize, my dear," she said, pressing Charlotte's hand, "and more strength than any of us suspected." William kept his distance, respecting Charlotte's need for space, but he was always near watching over her, ensuring no more harm could come. He handled the estate with renewed vigor, dismissing the corrupt steward and offering positions of trust to those who had stood by Charlotte. Jonathan prepared to leave Greymount, his own name finally cleared. Before his departure, he found Charlotte in the garden, the air sweet with spring. "I'm sorry for all the pain my presence caused," he said gently. "You deserve happiness, Charlotte. I hope you find it here, or wherever your heart leads you." She embraced him, tears of gratitude in her eyes. "Thank you, Jonathan, for everything." As the scandal faded and spring deepened, a fragile peace settled over Greymount. Charlotte walked the gardens, her steps lighter, her heart still wary but no longer broken. William watched her from a distance, hope flickering in his eyes, waiting at last for a sign that forgiveness might be possible. But the future was far from certain. Old wounds left scars, and the world beyond Greymount's gates would not forget so easily. Yet, as Charlotte paused beneath the budding roses, she allowed herself to believe that, just maybe, the worst of the storm had passed, and that new beginnings, though hard-won, were still within reach. The days lengthened into summer, sunlight gilding the wild meadows and ancient stones of Greymount. It was a season of slow transformation, visible in the swelling fields and in the subtle, hard-won changes within the house itself. The Duke's shadow, once so absolute, had begun to shrink. Where once his word was law, now it was met with murmurs, sidelong glances, and the polite indifference of those who sensed the turning tide. One by one, his allies abandoned him. Old friends ceased their visits, the vicar's wife returned his letters unopened. Even the Dowager Duchess, once his most loyal defender, was often seen walking the gardens with Charlotte. Her arm slipped through the younger woman's, as if to make her allegiance clear. The Duke retreated to his study, emerging less and less. His presence felt more in the echo of slammed doors than in the strength of his command. Meanwhile, Charlotte's reputation, once so perilously bruised, was gently restored. The truth of the Duke's schemes and Jonathan's innocence spread through the county, carried by grateful tenants, loyal servants, and the careful words of respected friends. At Sunday service, Charlotte received warm greetings and congratulatory smiles. Mrs. Hodge boasted to the butcher's wife of her lady's wisdom, and the children of the estate brought Charlotte wildflowers and shy, sticky hands. For the first time, she felt herself not merely tolerated, but truly accepted. William, chastened by the storm they had weathered, resolved to make amends. He called the household together in the great hall, his voice steady and clear. "I have wronged Lady Charlotte by doubting her, and I ask your forgiveness, hers most of all. From this day, she is my partner in all things. Those who support her support me." There was a ripple of applause, modest but real, and Charlotte, standing at his side, felt a knot in her heart loosen. They began in earnest to work together for the future of Greymount. Charlotte took charge of the estate accounts and the welfare of the tenants, introducing new methods for crop rotation and setting up a small school for the laborers' children. William handled the legal affairs and repairs, riding out with the steward to inspect boundaries and mend fences. They argued sometimes about the cost of seed or the proper use of a neglected field. But for the first time, their disagreements were spirited, not wounding. Laughter became more frequent at their table. The walls that had divided them softened, then slowly fell away. In quiet moments, they discovered each other anew. William found Charlotte one evening in the nursery, mending a tiny bonnet. She looked up, her eyes bright with amusement. "Do you think our child will have your stubbornness or mine?" He smiled, unguarded. "Heaven help us if it's both." Charlotte laughed, and the sound warmed him. He reached for her hand, marveling at how easily their fingers fit together. They began to confide in one another, first with small confessions, her longing for a letter from home, his childhood nightmares of the moors, and then with deeper truths. Charlotte spoke of her fear of failing, of being forever an outsider. William shared his dread of becoming his father, of losing himself to bitterness and regret. One night, as they walked the gardens beneath the stars, Charlotte paused, breathless. "William, do you ever think of leaving all this behind?" He glanced at her, surprised. "I used to, when everything felt impossible, but now," he squeezed her hand. "Now I think we could make something new here, together." Tears pricked her eyes, and she nodded, hope blooming where once there had only been anxiety. Charlotte's pregnancy advanced, bringing its own rhythm to their days. There were moments of discomfort, sleepless nights, sudden cravings, but also unexpected joys. The flutter of life within her, William's gentle hands at her waist, the quiet anticipation that lingered between them. They attended to nursery preparations together, William awkwardly assembling a cradle, Charlotte laughing at his determination. The estate prospered under their stewardship. Harvests were plentiful, the tenants content. The school flourished, and the people of the village spoke with pride of Greymount's new mistress. At the midsummer fair, Charlotte was called upon to judge preserves and award ribbons. The children sang her name in their games. Even William's former critics grudgingly acknowledged her skill and compassion. Jonathan, his name finally cleared, prepared for a new post with the army abroad. On his last day at Greymount, he found Charlotte in the orchard, sunlight dancing in her hair. "I wanted to say goodbye," he said gently. "You have been braver than anyone I know." She smiled, sadness and gratitude mingling in her eyes. "Thank you, Jonathan. I hope you find peace wherever you go." He bowed, formal but sincere. "I will never forget you, Charlotte, or what you did for me." William met Jonathan at the gate, offering a firm handshake. "You have my thanks for everything." Jonathan nodded, his rivalry with William laid finally to rest. He rode away, leaving behind only the memory of a complicated friendship and the faintest echo of what might have been. As the summer waned, Charlotte and William settled into a partnership neither had dreamed possible. They shared burdens and triumphs, laughter and quiet sorrow. William, once so guarded, now found himself watching Charlotte in the soft light of evening, awe and affection plain on his face. Charlotte, for her part, allowed herself to lean into his strength, trusting that together they could weather whatever storms remained. One night, as rain drummed softly against the windows, William took Charlotte's hand, his voice steady. "I know I have much to atone for, Charlotte, but I hope you will let me try." She squeezed his hand, her answer clear in the warmth of her touch. Outside, the land that had once seemed so forbidding was alive with promise. Greymount, restored and vibrant, stood as a testament to their endurance and hope. Yet, even as they celebrated their hard-won peace, change hovered at the threshold. The world beyond Greymount still held its share of danger, secrets, and the possibility of heartbreak. But for now, Charlotte and William faced it side by side, their love newborn and imperfect stronger than either had dared imagine. And as a new season beckoned, they prepared for the joys and trials yet to come, knowing at last that together they could meet whatever fate awaited them. Rain drummed softly against the leaded glass, a lullaby for Greymount's restless night. The house, usually so grand and imposing, held its breath. In the nursery, Charlotte clung to the bedpost, sweat-damp hair plastered to her brow, her breath coming in ragged waves. Around her, the midwife and the doctor moved quietly, voices low but confident. William paced the corridor, his heart thudding with a terror he had never known. Each cry from within was a knife, each silence a deeper wound. He pressed his palms together, whispering prayers he half remembered from childhood. The Dowager Duchess sat nearby, her posture regal but her eyes rimmed with concern. "She's strong," the Dowager said, surprising him with her gentleness. "She will come through." William nodded, unable to speak. He had never felt so powerless. At last, as dawn painted the sky with threads of gold, a thin, indignant wail pierced the stillness. William's breath caught. The nursery door opened, and the midwife's face was wreathed in smiles. "A daughter, my lord." "Both mother and child are well." He staggered into the room, scarcely trusting his legs. Charlotte lay against the pillows, pale but radiant, a tiny bundle cradled in her arms. She looked up, her eyes shining with exhaustion and fierce joy. "Come meet your daughter, William." He knelt beside the bed, his hands trembling as he touched the child's downy head. Awe flooded him, so immense it threatened to undo him. For a moment, he could only stare at the child, at Charlotte marveling at the miracle before him. "She is perfect," he whispered. "You are both perfect." Charlotte laughed softly, her voice hoarse but full of love. "She has your nose, I think. Poor thing." He smiled, tears stinging his eyes. "I have never loved anyone as I love you." She reached for his hand. "We have come so far, William." News of the child's safe arrival spread quickly. The staff bustled about the house with a new energy, their smiles genuine, their pride in the family restored. The tenants brought flowers and gifts, their children peering shyly at the new mistress and her babe. When Charlotte, still weak but determined, visited the gardens with the infant nestled in her arms, the Dowager Duchess, once so distant and critical, now hovered at Charlotte's side, dispensing advice and gentle admonitions. She insisted on overseeing the christening, declaring, "This child is the future of Greymount. She shall be cherished." Charlotte, still uncertain in her new role, took comfort in the old woman's presence. One afternoon, as they sat together in the nursery, the Dowager pressed Charlotte's hand. "I misjudged you, my dear. I see now that strength comes in many forms. You have brought peace to this house and happiness to my grandson. I am grateful." Tears pricked Charlotte's eyes. "Thank you, Your Grace. That means more than you know." William was transformed. The anxieties and doubts that had haunted him seemed to melt away beneath the weight of new responsibilities and newfound love. He was never far from Charlotte's side, rising in the night to soothe the child, walking with mother and daughter through the blossoming orchards, and attending to the estate's affairs with a confidence that had once eluded him. He made amends where he could, offering apologies to those he had wronged, restoring lost positions to loyal staff, and ensuring that Greymount was a place of kindness and justice. Charlotte watched him with growing pride, the old wounds between them healing, if not forgotten. One evening, as they sat before the fire, The infant asleep in Charlotte's arms, William spoke softly. I never imagined this would be our life. When we married, I thought only of duty, of my father's will, of my own resentments. But you have taught me to hope again, Charlotte. You have taught me to love. She smiled, brushing her fingers along his cheek. We built this together, William, out of so much pain and so much hope. He kissed her hand, silent promise shining in his eyes. The Duke, stripped of allies and shamed by his own machinations, withdrew from public life. He rarely left his rooms, avoiding the laughter that now filled Greymount's halls. Once, Charlotte met him in the corridor. For a moment, she saw something almost like regret flicker in his gaze. He inclined his head stiffly, then moved on, a lonely figure trapped by the consequences of his own ambition. The estate itself flourished. Under Charlotte's guidance, the school expanded. William's reforms improved the tenants' lives. The gardens, once neglected, burst with color. Summer fairs and winter feasts became tradition, and Greymount's doors were opened to friends and neighbors alike. The scars of scandal faded, replaced by a reputation for generosity and wisdom. Charlotte and William's partnership deepened with each passing day. They shared every decision, great and small, trusting one another as never before. When difficulties arose, they faced them side by side, the memory of old betrayals forging a bond that could not be easily broken. Forgiveness, Charlotte discovered, was not a single act, but a slow, daily choice. There were moments when the past threatened to intrude, when she remembered harsh words, or saw pain in William's eyes. But always, they returned to one another, choosing to move forward. As autumn painted the landscape in russet and gold, Charlotte stood on the terrace, her daughter gurgling happily in her arms. William joined her, wrapping an arm around her waist. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked quietly. She leaned into him, watching the sun dip low behind the hills. "Not for a moment. We have weathered the storm, William. We are stronger for it." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "I love you, Charlotte. Whatever may come, I will love you always." She smiled, contentment blooming within her. "And I, you." Below them, the estate stretched out in peace fields ripe for harvest. The river winding in silver through the meadows, the manor alive with laughter and light. It was a happiness neither had dared to dream, hard-won and all the sweeter for it. They had begun as strangers, united by duty and pride, then torn apart by secrets and pain. But in the end, through perseverance and grace, they had forged a partnership built on trust, respect, and a love that would endure. And so, as night fell gently over Greymount, Charlotte and William stood together, the future bright before them, ready at last to meet it, hand in hand.